Massey, and welcome to the Chris Massey Football Show here on the American Hearts Radio Network. We're coming to you from our Multimedia Chisel studios here in Smyrna, Georgia. And football season, man, the college season is winding down, and the NFL season is getting right in the thick of it, getting ready for the big December run that's going to lead into the playoffs. Tonight we're going to be talking about those Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, the Georgia Bulldogs, and the Atlanta Falcons. And it has been an exciting football season here in the state of Georgia. Even the Kennesaw State team is undefeated. So if you're a football fan of any of these teams, it has been good. Not as good for Tech as the other teams. It's been a little disappointing, and the Falcons still have a lot to prove out there. In fact, they get started proving that tonight in Seattle against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. All right, so when we come back, let's take a look at what's going on with those Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. We'll be right back.
Serving Atlanta since 1998, Massey Gutters understands the challenges specific to our area. Massey Gutters is familiar with all aspects of gutters and roofing. We use only the highest quality materials. With our fully trained and professional staff, you are guaranteed to get quality service and work. References available upon request. Call us today for a free estimate, 404-314-6800. Again, that's 404-314-6800. Call Massey Gutters today, 404-314-6800.
All right, we're back. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets head into the final game of the regular season against their state rival, the University of Georgia Bulldogs, with a record of 5-5. And I've got to tell you that if you're a Tech fan, you must be ready to pull your hair out. This has been a very frustrating season for the Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets have posted a 5-0 record at Bobby Dodd Stadium and are 0-5 in road games against games away from Bobby Dodd. They lost, of course, to Tennessee at the first game of the year, a game that they should have won and would have certainly set a better tone for the season. They went down to Miami and played Miami, the third-ranked team in the country right now. Very tough, 25-24. In fact, it's probably the closest and toughest game that the Hurricanes have played all year. They went to Clemson and were beaten 24-10. Now, there's no, you shouldn't hang your head at all for losing to Miami and Clemson on the road in respectable fashion like that. The thing that drives the Tech fans crazy is that you go to Virginia, a team that you should steamroll, and you're beaten by a couple of touchdowns. Then you come home and play Virginia Tech, arguably one of the best teams on your schedule, and you beat them. Then you go the next week to Duke, a team you should steamroll to, and you lose to them. So those losses to Virginia and those losses to Duke have got you at 5-5 when you really should have been sitting at 7-3. And man, if you could have found a way to hold on to the ball in that Tennessee game, Georgia Tech could be 8-2 going into this game against Georgia. And at 8-2, you guys would be ranked at least in the top 15. Now, of course, the season can be made for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets if they can beat the number 7 ranked Georgia Bulldogs, who are SEC East champs and are heading to the SEC Championship to face either Auburn or Alabama the first week of December. Georgia Tech has not won this game in Atlanta since 1999. They have not won. They have won they have won now 3 times in Athens under Paul Johnson. But if you remember in 1999, that was the game where Jasper Sanks went into the end zone and fumbled the ball. And, let's face it, it wasn't a fumble. And most Tech people will tell you that it wasn't a fumble. And Tech recovered it. The game was in overtime. It was one of the most exciting games ever at Bobby Dodd between Georgia and Georgia Tech, and Tech pulled out the victory. Tech at that time was on a 3-game run against the Bulldogs, winning in 98 in Athens, 99 at Bobby Dodd, and in 2000, which resulted in the firing of head coach Jim Donnan, who had lost 3 straight to the Bulldogs. Mark Richt came to town, and, Mark Richt was here 15 years and posted a 13-2 record against Georgia Tech. Very impressive. Kirby Smart's first game with the Yellow Jackets last year was in Sanford Stadium, and the Bulldogs were beat. And I'll just tell you, my daughter went to Georgia Tech, and I am a Georgia fan, and being around the Tech culture that I was around, going to the games, watching her when she was performing with the color guard there, that this game means more to the Georgia Tech people than it does to Georgia to win this game. It just does. Georgia wins this game. They just win it too much for it to really be a rivalry. If you go back to 1965, which was 52 seasons ago, when Vince Dooley took over, Vince Dooley went 19-6 against Georgia Tech. Ray Goff went 5-2. Jim Donnan, he went 3-3 against Georgia Tech. So let's see, that's 6, 8, 11. Mark Richt lost to him twice. That's 13. 14 times in 52 years, Georgia Tech has won this game. So they don't win it often, but when they do win it, it's big. I will go on record by saying this. Since I've been a Georgia fan since 1971, Georgia Tech has never beaten a great Georgia Bulldog team. They've never beaten a Georgia Bulldog team that has won the SEC championship. They have never beaten a Georgia Bulldog team that has gone to the SEC championship. The best team that they did beat was in 2008 when the Bulldogs posted a 10-3 record and wound up number 10 in the country. That team started off the year number 1, and Tech beat them. And that is probably the best team that the Yellow Jackets beat. They're going to have their hands full this Saturday. That running game with Georgia is going to be tough to stop there, and Georgia is going to have a lot more speed than a lot of these teams they have played. Clemson's speed certainly was a factor in the Tigers' 24-10 win over Georgia Tech at Death Valley. So this is a big game for the Yellow Jackets. If they win, they are bowl eligible. If they do not, they are not. Now, I don't know if they will take a 5-win team into the bowls when you consider that the Yellow Jackets did not get to play the University of Central Florida because of the hurricane. That game was not to be made up. By the way, University of Central Florida is undefeated, and that game was on the road, and the way things has gone for Tech, you could probably chalk that one up in the loss column. All right, when we come back, let's talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Johnny Van Zandt from Leonard Skinner here. Hey, come sail the Caribbean on the Southern Rock Cruise with all of our good friends. Hey, and we'll meet you over in Jamaica and play some Skinner for you. God bless.
Okay, we're back. Kirby Smart's second year as head coach at the University of Georgia has been a good one. The Bulldogs have had impressive wins like a 41-0 slashing of Tennessee in Knoxville, 42-7 over the Florida Gators. They beat every single team in the SEC East, and they beat Mississippi State in the West. When the first college football rankings came out, the Bulldogs sat at number 1, for 2 weeks. You can also throw an impressive win over a top 10 team, Notre Dame, in South Bend. The game against Auburn really kind of bothered me a little bit before it got here. The University of Georgia had beaten Auburn 5 out of 6 and 9 out of 11. And if you know anything about this series, you know that those numbers are not going to slant in one direction for too long before it comes back. It's a very tight, evenly played series, and it's been going on, for well over 100 years. It's the longest rivalry going on in the South. Georgia went into that game against Auburn, and we got the ball, and we marched right down the field and scored. And I've got to think that was one of the worst things that could have happened in that game. I think the Georgia players did what I did in my living room. I kicked back and said, we're going to handle these guys no problem. After that, nothing went right for the Bulldogs. They played their worst game of the year. 4 personal foul penalties, fumble punt, turnovers. They couldn't run the ball. Auburn hit them in the mouth and hit them hard, and the Bulldogs did not respond on offense or defense. Auburn won the game 40-17. Now, The next week, Georgia had to play the University of Kentucky. And this was an important game for a lot of reasons. Georgia didn't need to come out and win this game 20-14 or 24-17 or 21-14. They needed to show that they were the Bulldogs of old. They'd put that Auburn game behind them and are looking forward to what lies ahead for them, and they did. They took care of Kentucky 42-13. They stand right now at 10-1. Nick Chubb is now the second leading all-time rusher at the University of Georgia. He passed Bo Jackson on the all-time SEC list into the number 4 spot, and I believe that he has a chance to pass Kevin Falk or McFadden from Arkansas. I don't know which one's ahead of him, but I think he has a chance to move into that 3 spot. He had 151 yards last week against Kentucky. Sony Michel had a big game, and you cannot be happier for these two guys. They're roommates. They come back for their senior year. They've had a great year, and their last game in Athens was a memorable one for both of them. They both got in the end zone a couple of times, had some really terrific runs, and they are going to be missed in Athens when they both go to the NFL next year. I expect both of them to be gone by the end of the second round, which means they're going to be getting some hefty signing bonuses and some multi-million-dollar contracts. And these guys, they deserve it. Now, as we go into this Tech game, Georgia cannot be taking the Jackets for granted. I'm going to tell you right now, Georgia Tech, this is their season. They win this game, and they're going to forget about that loss at Duke and that loss at Virginia. Beating Georgia would put them into a bowl game, and it would knock Georgia probably out of contention to get into the playoffs, even if they win the SEC. I mean, it's crazy right now the way things are shaking out. Right as it stands right now, if Georgia wins this game and they go to the SEC championship game and they play Auburn or Alabama, and win, even though they are ranked number 7, they would move into one of the top 4 spots and get into the playoff. So, who do you want to play, Bulldog fans? You want to play Alabama or you want to play Auburn? Well, I'll tell you this. Alabama, who has won the SEC the last number of years, has had a cakewalk in that SEC championship game. 2 games against Missouri, 2 games against Florida. Auburn, when they won the SEC, it was not much of a contest. The East, let's face it, has not been very good. That'll be different this year. And that Auburn-Alabama game is going to be a bloodbath. I mean, make no mistake about it. Everything is on the line. And I think it is going to be difficult for Alabama or Auburn to get up for 2 big games in a row, which is exactly what they're going to have to do. I mean, look, they are playing an extra playoff game. This Auburn-Alabama game is a playoff game. The SEC championship game will be a playoff game. Of course, the Bulldogs have been assured a spot in the SEC championship game for a few weeks. So, I expect Georgia to win the game against Tech. I do, maybe close for a while, but I think in the second half, Georgia will put them away. And either way, I think they're going to have an easier time with Tech than Auburn or Alabama are going to have with each other. Alabama's beat up. They've got a lot of injuries, and I'm going to tell you right now, when they show up at Jordan-Hare Stadium, if that atmosphere is anything like it was when the Bulldogs went in there, it's going to be tough to win. Consequently, I do not think the University of Auburn has ever beaten the number 1 team twice in the same year. I mean, it's very rare that you get a shot at the number 1 team on your home field. Nevertheless, 2 number 1 teams in the same year, but that is exactly what Auburn is going to be out to do, looking to do. They look very tough against Georgia, and if they do play Georgia in the SEC championship game, I think you're going to see a completely different offensive game plan from the Bulldogs. It's going to be on a neutral field, and that will certainly help as well. So this Saturday, the Auburn-Alabama game is definitely the one to watch here in the country. And, of course, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, the Tech-Georgia game is always a big one. All right, when we come back, let's talk about those Atlanta Falcons.
It's Leon Smoker with Rachel Jordan.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you picking me up, man.
How do you not have any food at your house?
Well, you know, man, I meant to get some the other night when I went out to buy some weed, and I guess I just forgot.
Well, what do you want?
No, I don't care, man.
Burger Deluxe?
Yeah, that's cool.
All right.
Welcome to Burger Deluxe. May I take your order?
Yeah, man. I'll have a pepperoni pizza and a meatball sub.
I'm sorry, sir. We don't serve pizza here.
Well, okay then, man. Well, then I'll just have the sub.
Leon, they don't have Italian food here.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey, man, let me get some fried chicken, man.
They don't have fried chicken either.
What have they got?
Burgers and fries. It's Burgers Deluxe.
Oh, why'd we come here?
Because you said you wanted to.
I did, didn't I?
Yes.
All right, man. Well, let me get a burger and a fry.
One Burger Deluxe and one regular fry. $6.56.
Okay, Leon. $6.56.
But why aren't you telling me?
Don't tell me you don't have any money.
Okay.
You don't have any money?
Well, man, you told me not to tell you.
Oh, my.
Thank you very much. Come again.
Here. You're a pain in my ass, Leon.
Thanks, man.
What are you doing?
What's it look like I'm doing? I'm rolling up a joint. I like to smoke one before I eat, man. It makes the food taste better.
You've got 2 seconds to put that pot away.
Man, I tell you what, the next time that I need someone to come pick me up, man, and drive me somewhere and buy me some food, you're going to be the last person I call.
You know what? You're an idiot.
All right, we're back. We're back. Now, the Atlanta Falcons go into this game in Seattle tonight with a 5-4 record. And the Atlanta Falcons season has gone a lot like the way the Georgia Tech season has, okay? 2 very disappointing home losses to Buffalo and Miami. I mean, I just can't even believe we lost one of these games, nevertheless, both of them. If the Falcons would have pulled those games off, you know, they would be sitting here tonight at 7-2. But they lost them, and they're at 5-4. Now, tonight's game is huge, and this is why, okay? Right now, if the playoffs were to start, the Minnesota Vikings would win the North with an 8-2 record. Philadelphia would win the East. Philadelphia is 9-1. And Carson Wentz, man, he's looking like the real deal up there at quarterback. They are really rolling. The Saints are at 8-2. And this past Sunday, they won a game against the Washington Redskins that playoff contenders win. They were down by 15 points late in the fourth quarter, got it to overtime and won. They would win the South. And the LA Rams, probably the surprise team in the NFC this year, would win the West at 7-3. The Carolina Panthers at 7-3 would have one of the wild card spots. Now that leaves 2 playoff spots left. Okay, now here's the deal. If Atlanta wins tonight against Seattle, the Detroit Lions, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Seattle Seahawks would all be 6-4. But the advantage would go to the Falcons because they would own the tiebreaker against Detroit, and they would own the tiebreaker against Seattle. Now, the next team in line in the NFC is the Dallas Cowboys at 5-5, and Atlanta owns the tiebreaker with them as well. So win tonight. If you win tonight, we got 6 games left. 2 with the Saints, 1 with the Vikings, 1 with the Panthers, and 2 with the Bucks. The Falcons would be in good shape. Now, the crazy thing about this team is that if I would have told you at the beginning of the season that the defense was going to improve by 6 points a game, you would think that the Atlanta Falcons would be undefeated. But the defense's gain equals out because the offense is not averaging 28 points a game this year. They're averaging around 20. So, like last year, when we needed the defense to pick it up in the second half, which they did, The defense got better, and the Falcons got on a roll. This year, it's the opposite. We need the offense to kick it into gear, and if they can perform like the defense is performing, Atlanta is going to get to the playoffs. Now, people are saying, well, I don't believe it. Let me tell you something. Last year, after 10 games, the Falcons were 6-4. And unless I'm mistaken, nobody, no Atlanta fans, no commentators, nobody was picking the Falcons to win the Super Bowl. They weren't even picking them to go to the playoffs. I mean, it was a chance that they might get there. So you never know. And this Falcon team is so talented. Anything could happen. But, still, here we are, 9 games into the season, and Julio Jones has 1 touchdown. I mean, this offensive coordinator we got, man, you have got to get it in gear. I mean, he is the best player on the field, him and Matt Ryan, and they need to be hooking up a lot. And I look for that to happen tonight against the Seattle Seahawks. All-pro cornerback Richard Sherman is not playing. This falls right into the Falcons' fortune. Their secondary is beat up. Matt Ryan, if he gets time to throw the ball tonight, should have a big game, and the Falcons should win on the road in Seattle. Last year, we should have won this game. A controversial pass interference call that did not go Atlanta's way kept the Falcons from winning a close game up there in Seattle. And, of course, we know what happened when they came to the Dome last year. We kicked their ass. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens tonight. This is a big game. And if Atlanta wins, we're sitting at 6-4, assured one of those wild card spots if we can just continue to win. And look, once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Now, the Saints are 8-2, but they don't scare me. And the Eagles are 9-1, and they're certainly beatable as well. And I certainly don't believe in Minnesota at 8-2. I mean, let's face it, that division they play in is not good, and they've been able to handle the Lions for some reason. I think Detroit is actually a better team than Minnesota, but right now Minnesota has got a 2-game lead, and we're going to see them here in the Mercedes-Benz Dome coming up. So let's hope that things go the Falcons' way tonight. We can get this win. We will be 6-4 with 6 games left to play. Now, if you go 4-2 in those final 6, you're going to be 10-6, and you're probably going to be looking at a playoff spot. You lose tonight, you're 5-5. You lose a tiebreaker with Seattle. You drop back, and now you're going to have to go 5-1, which is going to be a lot tougher. I believe 10-6 will get you in the playoffs. I really do. I really do. Most seasons it does. 11 wins certainly would. But I'm thinking the Falcons have a good shot of going 10-6 and getting in a wild card and possibly even getting a wild card home game. You never can tell. Okay. All right. When we come back, a final note. As football season is winding down here in 2017. We'll be right back.
Serving Atlanta since 1998, Massey Gutters understands the challenges specific to our area. Massey Gutters is familiar with all aspects of gutters and roofing. We use only the highest quality materials. With our fully trained and professional staff, you are guaranteed to get quality service and work. References available upon request. Call us today for a free estimate. 404-314-6800. Again, that's 404-314-6800. Call Massey Gutters today. 404-314-6800.
All right. Today at 7:30 in the morning, the Georgia Dome was imploded. I had a very good seat from the balcony of my Midtown condo as I watched it come down. And, I grew up here in Atlanta, and I went to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium a lot when I was a kid. The Georgia Dome opened in 1992. At that time, I was 30 years old, 25 years ago. And, I went to my first Atlanta Falcon game at Fulton County Stadium when I was 8 years old. And I'm going to say between the age of 8 and 30, I went to Fulton County Stadium probably 2 to 3 times a year to see Falcon games. At least once a year, but most of the time, 2 games a year that I would go to. I always look forward to going. It was always a big time when I was a child and into my adulthood. Okay? Then they built the Dome in 1992. Now, I was open-minded when they built the Dome. The Superdome, the Saints have been playing in it for quite some time, and I always wondered, what it would be like. to watch a game inside. First game I went to at the Georgia Dome was against the Tampa Bay Bucks, and I went to that game and I sat in there and I looked around and I thought to myself, this is awful. This is absolutely awful. And in the 25 years that the Georgia Dome was open, I went to 7 NFL games. 7 NFL games. And if it wasn't for my good buddy Ted Koch, who invited me to come along with him, he had season tickets, it would have been less than that, okay? I just hate watching football inside a dome. I mean, let's face it. If I want to watch a game inside, I can do it in my living room, okay? There was no place to tailgate. In a survey by Sports Illustrated of the best NFL venues in the country, the 3 years that they did it, the Georgia Dome finished 30, 31, and 32. That's what they thought of the place. It was horrible. I mean, the SEC championship games were good in there, but let's face it, you could play that game anywhere, you know, and it was going to be good. The Dome really didn't have nothing to do with the excitement of that. You know, so Rankin Smith, you know, I mean, let's face it, he was not a very good owner. He did bring the Falcons to Atlanta. He can be given kudos for that. But the Georgia Dome was not built for the Falcons. It was not built for the Falcon fans. It was built so this city could get the Super Bowl, which they got 2 times during the time that the Georgia Dome was in operation. Now, for 2 Super Bowls, Atlanta fans were forced to watch indoor football for 25 years. 25 years on some of the most beautiful fall days in the country. We had to go inside to watch the Atlanta Falcons play. Okay? You know, and it's just sad that that was the case. You know, you look at cities like Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Chicago and Baltimore and Kansas City, places that have way worse weather than us, and they're playing outside, and it's just awesome. Green Bay, you know, at Lambeau Field, how about that, you know? And we don't have nothing like that. So Arthur Blank buys the Falcons, and, you know, Arthur says that he is going to, you know, he is for the fans, and he did some good things, you know, $2 hot dogs and stuff like that, that he still has at Mercedes-Benz Dome. But make no mistake about it, Mercedes-Benz Dome was not built for the Falcon fans. It was not. It was built to get the Super Bowl and all these other events, okay? Crazy thing about the Super Bowl is that when it comes to your town, you can't even get a ticket because they don't want to sell a ticket to a guy in Alpharetta that's going to go to the game and go home. They want to sell a ticket to a guy in Knoxville, Tennessee who's going to come to Atlanta and get a hotel room and spend money out there in all the restaurants. It's just bad. 1 second. There was a rat on the floor. Sorry about that. Anyway, so now, you know, you've got the Mercedes-Benz Dome, you know, and supposedly it's a retractable dome, okay? Well, guess what? The roof has only been open 1 time this year against the Green Bay Packers, and the roof being open in this place, please. It's like cracking the blinds in your house, okay? I mean, they might as well have just closed it. You know, it's a joke. It's a joke. But like the new SunTrust Park, it's got great restaurants and great amenities, you know. So what? The game is what counts. The game is what counts. And the Mercedes-Benz Dome is just the Georgia Dome on steroids. You know, and we're stuck watching football there. The only thing that could happen is that I hope when they do get the top open on the Mercedes-Benz Dome, wouldn't it be awesome if they couldn't get it to close? How about that? You know, then the sun would be shining in there all the time. You know, but it's not, you know, if you're sitting up under the, in the upper deck, you know, where the roof comes out over, you know, you might as well be inside. You know, the only people that know that the top is open are the players on the field, you know. And I'm sure that they're so into the game that they're not really concerned about whether it's opened or closed. So, Arthur, you know, you got your Mercedes-Benz Dome. You're going to get your Super Bowls. You know, the Final Four is going to be there. There's going to be concerts and this and the other. But a guy like me, who has been an Atlanta Falcon fan since 1971, you're not getting my money. I won't be back. I went once to see it. You know, I've seen it before. I've seen it before. And I'm not interested in seeing it. I would take Atlanta Fulton County Stadium back tomorrow. If there was some way you could reopen it. And let's face it, in the last year that place was a dump, but it was our dump. And it's where the Falcons played. It was a place where you got there at 12 o'clock and you ordered a hot dog and you walked over to put some onions on your hot dog and the onions were frozen. And they stayed frozen on halftime. And you expected them to be that way because they were like that every week. The bathrooms were crap. The place kind of had a stench to it. But man, it was where pro football was played in Atlanta. The Georgia Dome and the Mercedes Dome, they don't even come close. Not even a little bit. So that's all I've got for now. When we come back in January, we'll know whether or not those Georgia Bulldogs are in the playoffs. And we will know if Tech went to a bowl game and if the Falcons made the playoffs. So join us then. We'll see you next month.